This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to this episode of Roots and All. Today I'm speaking with Luke Boyle, Horticulture Manager at Healesville Sanctuary in Victoria, Australia, a leading conservation zoo nestled in native bushland, dedicated to protecting and showcasing Australia's unique wildlife. We chat about the incredible work Luke and his team are doing to ensure the sanctuary is not just a safe and enriching haven for animals, but also an inspiring and welcoming place for human visitors. A quick apology to everyone who worked hard to make this episode happen for the delay in getting it out. Regular listeners will know I wasn't well on returning from Australia.
So I did a gardening apprenticeship, and then I went and did some landscaping at night school. And I also did a really good course back in the 90s called Save the Bush. And that's using a weed method called the Bradley method, which was invented by a couple of bush regenerators in New South Wales. And you concentrate on your good bit of bush and you work out into the more weedier areas. But the bush actually comes back. So you encourage natural processes. So, yeah, we apply that here at the sanctuary. So, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And how long have you been at the sanctuary?
This is my fourth decade. So, yeah, I'm in my 32nd year. So,
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, congratulations. That's a fantastic achievement. And the garden is a reflection of your work. And actually, that was going to be one of my questions, which is how much design is involved in what you do in your sort of daily job?
a lot of design. Look, we've got a team of 9 here, and there's 34 hectares covered by the sanctuary, call it. And then we've got another section of bushland that we're also responsible for the maintenance of. But there is a resident ranger who coordinates the complete restoration of that.
Yeah. So describe the garden that's immediately around the sanctuary for me.
So it's like a green jewel in a sea of horticulture, pasture, housing, and it's this little remnant pocket with some really tall indigenous trees, so mainly manigum, blackwoods, candlebarks we call them. And there's a beautiful natural creek that comes through called Corranderk Creek, and that's got resident platypus, and in summer it's just this cool respite from the warm world.
Yeah, you do get that sense when you're walking through the wetter areas, really give you that sense of cool, don't they, as you walk around?
Yeah, and it's cool, it's shady. A lot of animals come here for respite from the heat of the day, today being quite a hot one. In winter, it's got down to -5 degrees here, big hard frost. And we can see the snow line on a couple of the hills behind us when it gets down to 600 metres above sea level. So, yeah, it's quite a climatic zone here, but it's classed as temperate. So.
Yeah, that's really surprising. Some of the things that you grow, do you lose much when it gets that cold?
Yeah, we've lost a couple of things to frost if they haven't been hardened off or if they've had a couple of easy years. We also are subject to high winds through here sometimes, so we manage that as well.
The other thing that I was thinking as I was walking around is, it's very much, as you said, a sanctuary for animals. It's also a place where the public comes and visits. Are you gardening with any one group particularly in mind, or is it just an interplay between all the different needs?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different visitor groups. We have everything from cruise ship visitors to kindergartens, primary schools, high schools, and universities that come, and we've got a resident teaching program as well that look at that whole gamut from bush kinder to VCE, PhD students. A lot of the vets offer some vet house programs, things like that.
Yeah. And as well as the people, you're gardening for the local wildlife as well?
Yeah, so local, we want to encourage that. We've got resident platypus, eels, a lot of bird life, a lot of mammals. We've got some pretty cool mammal representation here. We've got powerful owls, wedge-tailed eagles are a common visitor, swamp areas on our lake. We've got a big 5-acre lake out the back, Lake Corranderk, and there's always something going on there. Lots of bluebill ducks, cormorants, egrets, things like that.
Does the planting in some ways almost recede into the background because it is so natural? And is that a little bit what you're going for?
Yeah, so we've got zoological horticulturalists. So we not only work on the animal habitats, but we also work on outside the habitat zones. And the goal is to actually make it look like we haven't been there.
That's a very niche designing goal, isn't it? You don't get that very often. And yet, I mean, you're trying to make it, I suppose, look really natural, and you're not having any sign of artifice on show, but actually that in itself is quite an art, isn't it?
It is, and it's a skill, and it's not a pristine natural park, but it's a bushland garden. So, yeah, we make it visitor friendly, but also animal friendly.
Yeah. We had a walk round earlier. It's interesting what you were saying about, because you are presumably in an area where wildfires can come through, but you're having to, again, mitigate that risk. What are the main ways that you do that?
Yeah, so we do preparation all year for that, but in summertime we have a goal getting everything slashed and ready for the 1st of December. And we have a modified fuel zone that goes from one side of the bushland to the other side to our main visitor car park. And in that zone, it's just a slashed grass zone or the lake or some roads and car park. And that's so the Country Fire Authority can get in to knock a fire down if it actually did come through here.
Yeah.
We've also got a lot of sprinklers as well that we can turn on.
And talking about the plant in more detail, you mentioned that there's like a 90-10 rule. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we've got our plant palette is 90% indigenous or endemic flora, and then the other 10% is Australian native. So that could be anywhere from Australia, and it's things that you can get in the nurseries. Lots of flowers, colour, lots of contrast. They give those little designer pops for the areas that we want to encourage the visitors to sit back, dwell, and say, "Oh, I could grow that at home." So, around the cafes, around our wedding venue, in some of the corners, the decision-making places where people are stopping to decide which way to go, left or right, we'll actually put a red flowering gum in there, and they go, "Oh, I remember I was just here. I'll go that way now."
So like navigational markers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so nothing outside of Australia, though. You wouldn't bring in like an exotic from.
No, we've got one camellia, which is Haruyu, and that was part of the original house from the 1920s. So we've kept that as a historical tree.
And that is the history of the place then, is it? It was a private house?
It was built for an anatomical researcher, Sir Colin Mackenzie, and he left here, went to Canberra, and he left the house and the grounds to the local council, and then the council gave it to the zoo board, and then now we manage it.
So thinking about sourcing plants, you mentioned that you get your plants from community nurseries, which I thought was a fantastic scheme. Can you talk about where you get them from?
Yeah, so we try and encourage the local community groups. We buy from Friends of the Helmeted Honeyeaters, some other community groups that support land care. We've got a really good system in Australia called Land Care, which is landholders and community groups planting on land for habitat and restoration projects. And we also offer our plants from our retail shop. They're grown by a community enterprise, which we really enjoy supporting.
Yeah, it's lovely. I really like that.
So that's the 10% plants. So they're the Australian natives that have got a bit of colour and foliage contrast.
So again, thinking about the kind of design of it and the fact that it is supposed to look undesigned, in terms of maintenance, what does that involve?
So we've got, as I said, team of 9. We do all the park presentation in the morning. We change all the rubbish bins as well, so we're responsible for all the visitor waste. We blow all the paths. We do safety inspections of playgrounds and the creek play that you saw. That's the summer thing. We've got 2 creek zones, so we make sure that there's no broken glass in the creek, that there's no hazards, no branch hazards, things like that. We also do any inspections of trees that may have come down from a high wind overnight. And then we mow the lawns. We do a whole lot of deliveries for keepers because they've got all their substrate needs in the exhibits. So things like sand and mulches, planting in the exhibits. And we've also got responsible for the koalas. So we've got 20,000 trees in a couple of farms nearby the sanctuary, and we cut them 2 days a week. So it's cuts about 500 pieces a week, and we store that in a big fridge for the week. And so that's Monday, Tuesday. On a Wednesday, we go out and we do a browse cut, it's called. So that's all the non-koala food. So it's for all the other animals. So they might have, like a native tea tree or a bit of wattle. So for either harbour to sit in, or they might eat it as well. So it might be part of their nutrition, part of their enrichment. And then on a Thursday, the keepers bring all that out, pile it up, and we go and pick it all up. We take all our green waste down the back to a hard stand, and we grind it up with a giant hammer mill once a year, turn it into mulch, age it, and we'll either bring it back as soil or as a mulch for the gardens. We used to have a chipper, and we would chip, but it created too much noise. So now we take it all down the back, out of the way, make noise for one day a year, and it just creates that ambiance for the animals and the visitors.
And you told me about the noisy board.
Yep. So we've got an interdepartmental communications board where we list all our noisy activities. So we do whatever the operational tasks are for the coming week, month, and quarter. And then the keepers also tell us about any special things they've got on breeding or recovery zones. And so we'll actually stay out of those areas and keep the noise down. And we also try and do activities so we make the ambience for the visitors as well. So we might tackle like a quarter of the zone one morning, and then we're out of there. So it's not noisy for the rest of the day. Because people like yourself, they come a long way and they want to see our beautiful park and our animals that are so special.
And it is special. I mean, it's really an incredible place. And I feel like the horticulture is such a huge part of what happens here, but it's kind of almost happening without anybody noticing it's even going on. You mentioned as well to me about weeds, which I thought was quite interesting. So I'm guessing you weed like everybody else. You're not, letting things just run wild.
That little jewel I talked about, there's a lot of weeds that do come in via the water, by birds, wind. So we've got a weed management plan where we've listed all the weeds when they flower and seed. And so we'll remove them before that actually happens. So we do a weed calendar, and we tackle those weeds rather than just going into one area. We actually just target that particular weed. So we stay ahead of it. But weeds will never go away.
No, that is very true. Well, if they did, we would probably all be out of a job anyway. So.
But the beauty of having that indigenous flora is that it'll occupy that niche. And if you've got a living mulch, then there's less chance of a weed germinating. So that's the goal.
Right.
We've also got a goal of achieving 60% shade at path level. So for the visitors, keep them nice and cool. It's quite intense, the sun here. So as you found out today.
I did find out, yeah. And would you be tempted to increase that shade, or would that then start affecting the understory?
Yeah, it'll affect things like some paths. You want somewhere warm in winter to sit down. Lawns. We've got a couple of lawns for activities, like we get lots of school groups in. They need to run around and blow off some steam. So we have a couple of lawns.
Yeah. I mean, it's a phenomenal effort, and the organisation that goes into it is just incredible. What is next for the gardens?
So we're concentrating on a platypus renewal coming up. So we're in the design phase of that at the moment. There'll be a couple of ponds that'll be breeding. So a breeding facility for platypus, and visitors will be actually able to be immersed through those areas walking, and it will look like a natural creekside habitat. And you'll also be able to see the platypus in the existing platypus building, but you'll be immersed in the garden a little bit more, which is really exciting. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Excellent. So do you have any volunteers that get involved here?
We're blessed by having a really active volunteer group, and we've been incorporating them with our garden planning for the last 27 years. So there's a core of volunteers that all turn up, rain, hail or shine, and they come twice a month, week for the day with us, and they're invaluable. It's been really good. They've not only helped us, we've helped them. There's friendships made. It's a fantastic program.
Thank you very much to Luke, Hannah and all the team at Healesville Sanctuary. Thanks to Kim Reid for being my trusty podcast sidekick for the day and for filming the tour Luke gave us of the sanctuary, which you can see on my social media channels. And thanks as always to you for listening. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.